Alrighty, folks. Welcome.
What's good,
Let's see
party
here.
people? This
I
is
might be
According to
getting one
Woods,
here.
and I have the honor and privilege of talking and basically gathering an esteemed panel of promoters, fighters to talk about the this weekend's Roy Jones Jr. versus Mike Tyson fight. We have a promoter extraordinaire, or former fighter, Cool Breeze Justin Christie. We've got boxing promoter and aficionado Fernando Lipe, and professional fighter of the Northeast, John Parker. Guys, this fight is going down, and I don't know if it's much of a fight. I think in terms of the lexicon of fighting, right? I think I mean combat jiu-jitsu is probably a little bit more dangerous than what we're going to see on Saturday out of Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. But what say you?
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
Go ahead.
go for it.
All right, even in an exhibition match, and I know the rule set says no knockouts, no winners really going to be determined, stuff like that. We're all disappointed in that. I mean, I completely understand it. Growing up watching Iron Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. boxing, all throughout their careers, highlight careers for both of these amazing athletes. Granted, they're up there in age right now, so obviously the commission's not going to let them go full blown, to the point to where they could possibly die in the fight. Boxing's no joke. But even in an exhibition match, sparring, would you really volunteer to spar with Mike Tyson? I mean, really? It'd be fun on paper, but at the same time, he still goes hard, even in boxing and in exhibition. So, even though there's no official knockouts, that doesn't mean that we're not going to see one.
But they're getting paid, correct?
Yeah.
See, that in the people's
Yeah.
mind, and the people are paying, correct? So, I mean, from another standpoint, up until, I feel like it's kind of like we got duped into this one. Because say you bought your pay-per-view already, you know what I mean? And you were thinking it was going to be a real fight. And I guess it is, but it's kind of a letdown to anybody that was really, I mean, look at the videos Tyson was putting out. I mean, that did not look like they were going to play tippy tap.
I don't expect them.
I don't know, man. I'm a little confused, I guess.
Fernando, what say you?
He's on mute.
Okay. Fernando?
There you go.
All right, guys.
Yeah, no worries. So what say you? What do you think about
Yes.
this particular fight?
Yeah, man. My thoughts. Uh, I'll be truly honest with you. It's really hard to. I think the only people that are going to be watching are only just that old school generation that followed Roy Jones and Mike Tyson. Now is there problems in his career in boxing, but it's kind of interesting because you do see the Tyson. He still wants to be active, and the stipulation going into this bout, of course, just seems a little bit ridiculous because it does kind of stir away. I was expecting for this fight to have some type of knockout, at least, at least one knockout in there. But
Yeah.
I mean, hey,
Yeah.
I
So
don't see why.
I guess
I don't see why we're looking at Acre. So Mexico. Go ahead.
no. Um, you might jump out of it because the reception got
It's a little
choppy.
bit buffering.
So-
Yeah.
yeah. So in terms of and that's the thing, right? So a Tyson fight with no I mean, no knockouts. Like, what is that? That doesn't even make sense. And Eddie Law from the Keyboard Warriors podcast says it's a glorified sparring session, bro. We're handing out participation trophies and try to sell us Tyson versus Jones like it's going to be a crazy fight. I get that they're older, but it doesn't sell the fight. It's don't sell the fight like a real fight, 100%. And it's that's the thing. At a $50 price tag, right? That to me, that's the egregious thing. If they wanted to do it, that's absolutely fine, right? But like the egregious price tag of $50, right? And when on the other side of the deal, we've got. I mean, if you're an ardent fight fan and a fight fan of MMA, you've got a UFC card that you pay literally like $5 a month
I
for
still there?
ESPN Plus. Yeah, so you basically pay $5 a month for ESPN Plus, and you get like everything that is in a pay per view, and that's what they're running in opposition, right? So for Dana White, let's talk about like the real winner, right? For Dana White, he can say, I guarantee you there's going to be more eyeballs tuned in with ESPN subscription to the current card of the UFC than there will be on this people that are willing to pay $50 for this glorified exhibition match, right? So, I mean, Dana actually gets to say, hey, I outdrew a Tyson fight. Obviously it doesn't matter that it's like, maybe 30 years past his prime, whatever, but like even still, you outdrew Tyson. That's got to be a nice little feather in your cap.
No,
Oh
I
yeah.
agree. The question I got for you though is, would we even be talking about this fight if we knew a month ago the rules that are applied right now? I don't think we would. I think
No?
everybody would have aborted mission by now. It's kind of awkward that we just got all the rules and regulations like now. And when is this fight? It's like next week, right? Next week or the week after.
This weekend.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that seems odd. I mean, we ain't known very much until recently. So that's just kind of weird from a buyer's standpoint.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, right? Because um, what we kind of got a little bit because in terms of like the why, right? We got a little bit on their respective, both Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr.'s respective appearances on Joe Rogan's podcast, right? And they alluded to the fact that this is going to be a league, right? A Legends League, right? And
Mm.
we saw, Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. step back into the ring, in a, headgear kind of scenario, right? So essentially, this is what they wanted to do. And there's an official Twitter page, right, that dedicated to like this, like Legends League. I can't remember what they're calling it, but I mean that is something that they want to do. This is going to be like the essentially like the grand opening for this new league, right? So how this one does, I mean, I don't know. Well, already the promotion is way better, right? Even in this glorified exhibition crap show, I think that's just my opinion, right? It might not
Not
be
a
your
voting mine.
guys's, yeah, right. But it's infinitely better in terms of promotion than Golden Boy's Tito Chuck 3, right? Where people that were literally waiting outside didn't know that they could come in for the weigh-ins, right? At least the promoter, we don't know who the promoter is for this particular incarnation, but at the very least, you know, at least the two combatants know each other's names. Maybe the promoter knows their names. So, like, that's infinitely better than what we saw at the forum 2 years ago, right? So, that is, I mean, not to give it like too much of a negative slant on my view, but there is some positives. Like, it's better than at least one other high profile card.
My take on it is just because the rules say one thing doesn't mean that the fighters are going to behave like it's a real
Okay,
sparring match.
and I'll give
So
you
I
that.
mean, they may be both preparing to go to an all-out freaking war, but they have to comply with these rules per the commission to make it happen. because obviously, like watched in that movie, what was it where they did the Raging Bull versus Stallone movie, the Grudge match. You
Grudge
know how
match, yeah.
they highlighted the two older fighters having to come back and go through the process of getting approved through the commission and so on and so forth. Well, working with the commission out here in Oklahoma, I don't know how it is in California or wherever they're holding this fight. I'm not exactly sure where they're holding the fight, but I'm sure the commission is having a hard time agreeing to officially sanction the fight as an actual boxing match, with both of these guys being as old as they are. I mean, they have to go through, especially for sanctioning, they got to go through all these medical tests. They got to go through all this stuff that is just going to make it more difficult for them to, get passed through. And with both of these guys, I mean, Roy Jones Jr. has, he's got 66 wins to his credit, 9 losses. He's been in a lot of bouts, and that's not even counting his amateur career. Mike Tyson, he's got 56 professional fights, 6 losses, 50 wins himself. And, that is a lot of shots to the head. That's a lot of shots to the body. You look at them, they're looking great for, over 50 years old, looking fantastic. You got to give them credit for that. But that doesn't tell you what kind of internal damage they've taken over the years, what kind of, health problems they may have had. Getting older sucks, like they got prostate problems, they got all this other stuff. It's no joke. But for both of these guys to still be able to get in there at this level with such a high level, notable, legendary fighter across the ring from them, both cases included in that, this is just going to be one of those things that, you can't help but watch it. It may be like watching a car crash, but at the same time, both of these guys are coming in, even in an exhibition rules, with a storied highlight career from both of these guys. Championships, with Mike Tyson being a former undisputed heavyweight champion, with Roy Jones Jr. being a former IBF middleweight champion, super middleweight champion, undisputed light heavyweight champion, WBA heavyweight champion, so on and so forth. There's just so much, pageantry and talent and accolades behind both of these guys. I mean, the hype train builds itself. So I mean, even if these two guys were just going to sit there and meet like like Rocky and Apollo Creed in the gym for that one-off little sparring match to see who the better man is, man, this is still going to be something to watch.
No, you make an interesting argument, and but here's the thing: it is in fact going down in California, right? And this is again, we'll bring up the aforementioned Tito Chuck 3 fight because that also happened in California, right? So, not to say that it's a stretch and to compare both or what have you, but like, I mean, we're talking about this, not the same rules of engagement, but I mean, pretty similarly in terms of what the commission is seeing, right? So.
Right.
But that being said, like 2-minute rounds, this is like an amateur MMA contest contested here in California. Like that's essentially it. Like 3. Actually, I think it's like 3 threes is what you get. And yes, Tyson looks amazing, right? And one thing that a lot of people are forgetting about Roy is the fact that he did win a heavyweight title, a WBC heavyweight title, right? So. And that happened back in '96 at his prime, and that just shows you, WBA, right? So that does show his proliferancy in terms of his accolades in boxing, right? So it's but in terms of like Tyson's comeback fight, right? I mean, obviously we saw the Fox fight with Galata, and so like him coming back to the sport of boxing, right? And you're thinking about dream opponents. The last person that I thought of for him to face was Roy Jones, right? But in terms of like getting back into it, right? Their appearances on Joe Rogan, respectively, were like, oh man, the fire's there, right? And Roy Jones Jr. only retired like 2 years ago. Like that's not, and he's still consistently training, So, and we've seen the footage of Tyson. And and he's enlisted none other than Rafael Cordero, right? The genius behind Shootbox and Vanderlei Silva and Anderson Silva and Lyoto Machida. Like that's for basically we're doomed, right? So, I mean, obviously, the motto is past and everything like that, but like this is that shows me that he was taking it seriously. But after hearing about like from Roy Jones' side of things about like all of the hoops that he had to go through, and he just said, "Fine, whatever, 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 whatever." Um, I don't know what not only the fight is going to look like, but also the league is going to look like. Because again, you know, De La Hoya, and again, to me, I think if you learn from history, like if you don't learn from history, it's doomed to repeat itself. So you know, De La Hoya thought he was going to revolutionize the MMA world, in that outing, and didn't, right? So, I mean, especially at the price point, right? During a pandemic, $50. That's a lot for essentially a glorified exhibition. And obviously, Jake Paul's on this card, right? Jake Paul and KSI sold out the Staples Center. I mean, that is not hyperbole. That happened, right? Now, obviously, the tickets were priced nicely and whatever, but like that was a glorified exhibition as well.
On that note, though, on that note, both of them guys hyped that fight to the end of time. I mean, they were gonna sell out either way. They were big YouTube guys. I mean, my kids were talking about it. I mean, it was they don't even care about boxing. You know what I mean? But they knew about it and everything happened. So my point is, it's like a little different with Nate Robinson versus Jake Paul. You know what I mean? Like Nate Robinson is kind of a old school basketball player that ain't even played in like a while, and now he's gonna go fight professionally, kind of. Or is the rules the same for him as Tyson and Jones? You know what I mean? Is there stipulations in that match? Because I would think there might want to be. Because no offense, but Paul is no joke. I mean, he can box. I mean, legitimately. I watched him. I mean, I'm not a fan, but I mean, I still saw that he trained properly. I mean, so he is a boxer. Now, Nate, in my eyes, is an amateur. Why are you putting an amateur against a pro? So I don't know.
Well,
Well, see,
Nate's a debut pro, amateur turning pro at most. Which I mean, with Jake Paul only having one win under his belt, yeah, he's been training, yeah, all that stuff. But I mean, at the same time, he's still a 1-0 pro, which is still, from a matchmaking standpoint, that it does make sense. I mean, ideally, you would want a debut versus a debut if you could help it. But you're looking at like a debut fighting either a 1-0 or an 0-1, and 0-1 doesn't sell nearly as good as a 1-0. Jake Paul, he's known to put asses in seats, so that's money on the table for these guys. And
See, that's
at
what
the end
I'm
of the
hearing.
day, that's their job.
Money. It's
Mhm.
about the money. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
I'm looking at a lot of this stuff mostly, from a promotional standpoint, kind of in the same light as celebrity boxing. The
No,
celebrity
fair enough.
boxing, yeah, the celebrity boxing, a lot of people don't take it too seriously, but to those guys, I mean, that's the best fights they've ever done. That's the only fights they've ever done. And like you get people like Dustin Diamond, Screech from Saved by the Bell getting in there and doing stuff. People are going to watch that. People want to see
Right.
Screech fight. I want to see Screech fight. He may not be, a Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather, but I still want to watch it. There's still going to be money in it, and if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. That's just the way it is. So like these guys here putting asses in seats, bringing eyes to the product. They're doing their job on the promoting side, and they get to get in there and test themselves. 1-on-1 against another man, exhibition or not. You find out who you are and who your heart is. It may not be for like the 12-round knockout drag out for the all the pride in the world, but at the end of the day, you go back to your family and your friends, and they're going to critique how you did. So you still got to stand up and show yourself as a man.
To me, though, I just like as I was saying before we started, I find it just odd that the three preliminary fights or whatever are all top notch, real deal boxing for real titles, whether it is what it is or not. And
Mm-hmm.
then we got to watch the damn circus. John L. Sullivan's rolling over in his grave right now. You know what I mean? Like, are you for real right now? You're gonna like the real boxers are gonna do their thing, and then they're gonna do this, and then Tyson and him are gonna play touch butt.
One thing I'm really excited about is the marquee names of Tyson and Jones is actually going to be able to bring eyes to this undercard. You know, we got talented fighters like we got Giuseppe Cusamo or Cusimano taking on Oklahoma's Nick Jones. Man, Nick Jones, I know this guy personally. He is a hell of a fighter that hasn't had a lot of eyes on him because he's from Oklahoma, because he's fighting in in these
I agree
lower
there,
promotions.
because
So
Shimano's up this way. So I
right.
know.
One thing about like the older generation, especially fighters, pro wrestlers, things like that, one thing that they can give to the younger generation is that rub. They've got that celebrity. They've had those championship bouts. They've had those millions and millions of followers. So they're going to bring the eyes to the prize on this. And all these fans who watch these guys in their career get to watch these new guys coming up. Like, I mean, you got Edward Vasquez coming up. These guys are going to have new eyes that have never seen these guys fight before, ever. And they're going to be on a world stage with this promotion. And, granted, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones may be an exhibition fight. That may be, kind of the hook that brings these guys in. But what they're doing is shining the light on these younger guys. And that's what's really important, is bringing up the next generation of boxers, the next generation of things. Like what Adam was saying, a lot of people feel like, like boxing is dying. Because we got Triple G, Canelo, we got stuff like that happening, which is big marquee fights, but they're few and far between when it comes to boxing coming in versus like the MMA fights. You're just constantly just a steamroll of new talent and new stuff like that. Well, one thing that MMA has, like UFC, the Ultimate Fighter, and the Contender Series, you get to check out the profiles of these fighters in advance, and they really build character development for each one of these fighters. You don't get that in boxing. So when you get these what we would call kind of the circus show style fights with like Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., some people may criticize it as one thing or another, but at the end of the day, they're bringing eyes to talent that a lot of people, and especially all over the world and in this country, don't get to see every day, and they don't get to know these guys. So whenever I see Nick Jones, I love this guy to death. He's one hell of a fighter. He's a championship caliber fighter in his own right. Fighting for a title on this undercard. People are going to take notice of these guys, and this is their moment to really come out and shine and show who they really are. And then you never know, you may be getting, the next generation of Mike Tysons or Roy Joneses or Floyd Mayweathers or all these guys coming up right here, and you get to see them this weekend on this fight card.
Now, I want to say, though, on the note of boxing losing, I think it's gaining more steam than you think, because I think with the bare knuckle boxing coming, I mean, that's turning out to be a hot commodity. And I
Shout
got
out to my friend Dave Feldman.
Dave Feldman, and my one of the fellows I have trained with in the past, Chris Golden Glove Saros. He's ranked number 5 heavyweight in the world, and he's going up against Josh Burns, is it, I believe?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a crazy fight. And I mean, so I think there's big things happening. I mean, some of them boys in there, Shoemakers, and the Lobov fight, they're gaining a lot of steam. So I don't know as though boxing's dying, but traditional boxing might be a little bit.
Absolutely.
Especially with the padded gloves giving you so much brain trauma. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. They just came out with a study that the statistics are showing there's statistically less damage and injuries to the fighters in bare knuckle boxing than there is with the padded glove boxing.
Now, let me say this though: I still don't want to get hit by any of these guys because they're going to hit hard. but agreed,
I have been hit by some of these guys. It's not as fun as you think, but it's.
No, I've been hit by some massive dudes myself. I mean, it's not. I'm just kind of playing, but point being said, I mean, they still hit hard. I mean, if you look at McAllister versus Starro and what Starro knocked him out, I believe he cracked his whole orbital, and the sound of that hit was unreal. And it's something that crazy. I think you don't get from regular traditional boxing. Yeah, you get the knockouts and you see them fall down, but man, there's a little more excitement going. So I think boxing's gaining some steam, just maybe not to
It needs some fine tuning. Boxing, I mean, I don't think boxing will really go anywhere as far as go away. Boxing has its place in history. Boxing is, always going to be the sweet science. I'm wanting to get a lot more analytical fight science coverage of boxing and all combat sports. We're getting that coming into mixed martial arts. You got your Joe Rogans, you got your Anthony Smiths, and all these guys that can really break down the fight in such a technical manner. And then on the flip side, we're sitting here listening to like the Ak and Barak show for DAZN on Sirius XM, and you're hearing these guys, really, nod their head at each other and go, "Oh, that guy's a boxer versus the other one is a boxer puncher." Like that's going to make sense to the casual fan. There's no scientific analytics to that, as far as like it's one of those if you know, where like you're going to have a brawler versus somebody who's really trained in the art of boxing. But it's one of those things like where you're talking like the difference with MMA fans coming into boxing, which I think is where the money's going to be in the resurgence of boxing. Once we can get that coming in, man, it's just going to blow up once again. And that's actually where we're coming in, like with Midway Sports and Entertainment in Oklahoma. We're wanting to bring boxing back. We're wanting to bring back the American Boxing Association and get these guys that real analytical boxing prestige that needs to come back to it. And the same thing with all combat sports, professional kickboxing, mixed martial arts. All these guys are just putting their body on the line in a combat sports manner, and if it's done right, man, you can promote it to the whole world.
No, 100%. To which Matthew Hagan says Tyson's going to end up killing someone.
We've thought that for years.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe not in the ring, but
yeah. And are they using HGH or testosterone? Again, to which I say, I hope so. I want them to maybe that's the justification of not having the commission, not having referees and everything like that. Just load them up with everything. Just like how, we mentioned Joe Rogan, right? It's like, oh, does Joe Rogan want to fight? It's like, no. Him himself, self-admittedly, he pissed the rainbow. Like, he's just everything. Like, glowing like a damn Klingon or whatever, like a radioactive person or whatever. So, like, I hope so. I hope load these guys up with everything. If this is like one last shot and what have you, load them up. And then hell, bring Fedor out of retirement. Right. Let's get Crow Cop in here. Like, if this is going to be a Legends League,
they got to put a boxing glove on their dick.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. I'm for it. I'm in. I'm totally in.
I'm with you though. If it's going to be a circus, let's make it a circus. That's the key to my point here. Is like, let's make it known that it's going to be a circus. It's what it is, and
that's what they all are.
But see, they tried to sell me on something else. Okay, and that's my argument with this whole thing, is that they know what they did. Okay, they can't tell me they didn't do this. And the casual fan is sitting back. The casual fan that don't know is sitting back going, "What the hell, man? This is bullshit." But I get where everybody's coming from myself. But just me as a casual fan, part of me is like, I'm like, dude, I watched them videos for months. I watched everything Tyson was doing. Like, dude, he's going to kill this guy. Yes. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, it's going to be more like flag football. So I'm just a little bummed in my heart. But I do get it. I get the age. I get all of it. What you say makes complete sense. Last thing
they may have to do that just to let it happen. Because one thing we're not seeing is all the forces that are trying to get this to not happen. You get the sanctioning bodies, you get all these legalities behind it, so on and so forth. And I bet there's a huge pushback against this even happening at all. Especially in the boxing world, because you get these other promoters who aren't behind it. They're going to put money against it so they can promote their little fight. It's kind of crazy. So like whenever they kind of take a step back and be like, well, we're going to abide by these lower rules, man, when that bell rings, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, and here's the thing in terms of the commission, right? So what I know, right, this nobody has substantiated it, but I've heard it from a number of people that because of COVID, in terms of testing, just for COVID testing, we're hearing to the tune of $20,000 to $30,000 for a card, right? So that's on top of booking the venue. That's on top of, in the other commission fees, right? That's on top of, the insurance that you would have to have on something like this, right?
Mhm.
And I would think that, whatever insurance, whatever, like a rock concert, right? Whoever sponsors a rock tour, right? Or any concert tour, is the same type of people that would do this, right? And maybe there's a Lloyd's of London deal, or what have you. But with that all being said, in California, since COVID is happening, the only thing that has happened in terms of fighting, and mind you, pre-COVID, we had fights every weekend, whether it be boxing, MMA, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and then a few times a year, Bellator and UFC came, right? So like I was working every weekend pretty much, for the last 4 years, right? So
Same.
we don't have that, right? Exactly, right? So we don't have that, right? And to me, I just think like you would think that if you obviously the I think it's PBC, Top Rank, and Golden Boy have all ran shows, but also these are promotions that had big money TV deals with whether it be streaming service or over the air antenna TV. They can write $100,000, $110,000 expense off as a production expense. That's way lower than a lot of TV shows that you see in like the top five of your Hulu profile, or the Nielsen ratings, right? So with that all being said, you know that's what I'm interested to see. But what I'm interested to see also is your guys' predictions. How do you guys see this going down?
I think Tyson and Jones will end in a no contest.
I'll drink to
Okay.
that.
Safe
I
bet. Safe bet.
safe bet. John, what you
Yeah,
got?
Uh, I'd like to at least see this, okay? I'd like to think for the first round, they go out there, and even if they don't go for the head, let's get some really serious body stuff going, and at least give us a few dollars of our money back. But at the end of the day, it's an exhibition. Nobody's winning nothing, so it don't matter how it goes down. Like he said, it's now WWE, man. It's entertainment. So I'm more excited about the undercard because, like I said, we got 3 fighters from up New England way on that card. Well, one of them going against Nick Jones. I'm
Yeah.
more impressed with the undercard. I could care less what Jake Paul does to Nate Robinson. I could care at this point now what happens between Jones or Tyson. But maybe if we can get one round where they actually do something, that would be kind of get some
I
hits
think this is
in
going to be
there.
a fun evening
If not, it's
altogether.
gonna be a whole lot of Tyson doing this.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is still entertaining.
Yeah, that
It
is
is.
funny. I don't know. Yeah.
Now Fernando Lipe, he says that I believe it's going to be the most difficult challenge for Roy Jones. My belief is coming up to heavyweight and actually fight one of the baddest men on the planet, Iron Mike Tyson, 100%. And I thought Matthew Hagan goes, I thought the latest Rocky movies were fictional, but yet we're seeing this sort of thing play out in real life.
Yeah.
I agree. And then Mike Tyson dominated the heavyweight division with his knockout power. If a younger Roy Jones was serious about taking Tyson, he should have done it back then, now, and not past the prime of Tyson, which I agree. And Roy Jones Jr., to his credit, he did try to make that fight happen right after he got out of jail. But it's the Tyson camp at the time that put the kibosh on it, and then Mike no longer wanted to fight. He retired essentially. But that was essentially what was. We should have had this in '96. Actually, I want to say it was like '98. Don't quote me on it, but I want to say like between '96 and '98, but before the millennium, right? So we should have had it. Your forces that be prevented it from happening, but we're getting it now. As like I was so into. Wait, first I was like, I don't want to see it, right? Then I heard them on Rogan, both, and I was like, I'm in. And then when Joe Rojas of Beyond the Cage with Joel, essentially, he was the first one to kind of share the rules of engagement, and I was like, Yeah, but so I actually think it's going to be like a double nut shot or double KO. Because here's the thing, in big money boxing fights, and we saw it in the instances whether not so much with Floyd and Connor, but like definitely the Canelo Triple G, right? The first one, Triple G won, in my opinion, by consensus pick, he won, right? Second one, but they called it a draw. Second one, again, it was close, way closer, but I still think that Triple G edged out Canelo, right? But the money was in Canelo being a young Mexican star that, looks like a dang GQ model, right? So that's it, right? So to me, I just think when all the eyes are upon it, right, and people have fallen in or and out of love with professional boxing over the last, I'd say, 20 years, right? Obviously, I think the assumption that could be made, and I've heard it talked about, how the business is doing on how well that people care about the heavyweights, right? So we had the Klitschko brothers who only fought in Europe, and I mean they wouldn't fight each other, so you couldn't get a unified champion, right? So we're kind of even 20 years after the fact of their reign, and they weren't exciting fighters, right? We didn't get it until like again the Tyson Fury, Andrew Ruiz, Anthony Joshua. Like there's four heavyweights that people give a damn about, which is awesome. But
Mhm.
still, when you have fights like this, I think that boxing will be boxing even in the most boxing moments, right? Where like you, think of the millions of people that could have like basically gotten brought in from both the pop culture lexicon as well as the ardent fan if they would have just called it straight down the middle on Canelo Triple G, right? That could
Mhm.
have happened, right? And in terms of like, I mentioned the few fights, the Golden Boy and Top Rank. In terms of who's adapted the best in terms of visual TV presentation, I think boxing has even edged out MMA in terms of, aside from Bellator, right? Bellator does pretty damn good, but aside from Bellator, I think Top Rank and Golden Boy, those shows and the way that they kind of had like a banner crowd and like it's perfect. That's what like the UFC, whether it be Fight Island or Apex, one thing that the UFC will do at every pass is essentially the most majestic locations in the world, the most beautiful arenas in the world. They will make it look exactly the same, almost indistinguishable, right? So
Mhm.
hopefully, the way that it's set up, shot, and everything like that, we will see latent boxing fans or new boxing fans grab across. And one person that I think is going to be the star of the show, just look at his record and what he's done, is Badu Jack, right? Badu Jack, I think he's going to have a knockout that is going to be on Instagram, on whatever. Like people are going to be like, whatever. And it's that between that and like one of the Pauls fighting. I think that's where the highlights are going to be. I don't know if you've already paid the pay per view. There's no way that you're not going to see the Tyson Roy Jones Jr. fight, right? And even if you're absolutely like aghast of what happens during the fight, they got your $50. That's
Mhm.
unequivocally true. But I think the value is going to be in whatever Jake Paul does because he's got the Instagram, YouTube crowd, and then the ardent boxing fan is going to be whatever the hell Badu Jack does, and I think he's going to win. That's I think that's going to be the meat off of the fluff.
I mean, with him taking on, with Badu Jack taking on a 13-0 Blake McKernan, dude, that's, he didn't get 13-0, for nothing unless they completely, totally padded his record against a bunch of, tomato cans. But, I don't see that happening as well. So, I mean, Blake McKernan, I don't see him as being any kind of a pushover. So if Badu Jack's going to come in and get that knockout, man, he's going to have to work at it. It may come in the fifth, sixth, seventh round, or I don't know even know how many rounds they're doing for his fight. But
I think we're doing eight.
yeah,
Eight
if
is
they're
what
going
I'm
up to
saying.
eight, yeah, it'll have to come
Yeah.
later on against Blake McKernan. Really, work his body, get him, get that fatigue going later on in the fight and work at his cardio before he could really put him away and possibly get either a highlight KO or put him away with a good technical knockout. But if Bobby Jackson will do it, he's going to have to work against Blake for sure.
Agreed. I don't know. I think Blake ain't no slouch from what I'm seeing. I mean, the research I've done, I'm looking at a guy that's probably going to get dirty before it's over. I mean, so I think it's up for. I think actually, in my mind, I think Blake's got the upper hand. If you want my opinion, I mean, yeah, the other guy's got a few more fights, but I mean, we're looking at 3 losses and 3 draws on top of it. I mean, so them play into your psyche. You know what I mean? And going into a 13-0 seems like a number and a lower number than his numbers. But sometimes, I mean, we don't know what happened in them 6 fights right there. Okay, was the 3 decisions? Did he get tore up? You know what I mean? Was it questionable? Did he get hurt in any of them? That's going to make him shyer in moments, in his mind. Because psyche plays a big part of it. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, because
I'm
he's
kind of
got
rooting
3
for Blake.
draws, 3 losses. Yeah,
Yeah, so
it's
I
just
mean, 13-0 gives you an edge. You know what I mean? I can't. When you're undefeated, there's something about that. To have that edge, the cockiness you're going in with. I know that's deceptive sometimes and gets you in trouble, but it's like when MVP was on the chair. I mean, before he got taken out by Lima, the guy was just scary. You didn't. Would you sign up to fight him? It's like at that time you're like, no, because something about that undefeated run, that makes you a badass. So I think Blake might have a pretty good chance. So that's actually the only fight on that top on them 4 that's probably going to be any good.
I don't know. I mean, we got a 9-0 Hasim Rahman taking on a 1-0 Rashad Coulter. I mean, that on paper the 1-0 doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, if you're looking at his amateur career, there's a reason why they're allowing a 9-0 taking on a 1-0. I don't know how things are in California. I've heard their commission's pretty strict. I don't know how well it is with boxing. I know it is for MMA, but here in Oklahoma with our boxing commission, a lot of times they wouldn't even allow that fight to
Well,
happen
that's
because
what I was
of the
wondering.
team records. But if Rashad's coming in with like, I don't know, say for example, like 100 something wins as an amateur, Golden Gloves winner, Olympic caliber boxer, he may be coming in with 1-0 as a pro, but he may be outclassing Hasim. So I mean, unless you're really, really digging deep into the past career stats of it, which a lot of commissions do, I mean that may be a barn burner too, and we may come out the gate with that main card with something that's just going to light the whole house on fire.
Now, one thing I'm excited about that you're saying there is that for once, though, these are both undefeated fighters coming, whether it's 1-0 or 9-0 or 4-0, whatever the
The
records
O
are.
must go.
But the key to this story is that at least for once, the 1-0 is not trying to pad his record. I mean, he's doing legit fight, even if it is number 2. That's
And
still,
that
I
should
mean,
scare people.
right, because in 10 fights from now, you probably should worry. So give him time. I mean, that's got balls right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's the way it should be. That's
Mhm.
you want better competition. You don't want to be fighting bums, man. I mean,
Mhm.
they're not bums, but still, you know what I mean. You know who you're fighting
Right.
a lot
You
of
don't want
times.
to fight these gimme fights. You
Right,
don't want to see these guys go in there and be like, oh, this guy here is just gonna walk right through him, so it's not even gonna be anything. You don't get eyes on the prize with that. They're just building up that record so they get those big money fights later. I mean, I'm like just like you, man. I'm super excited about this undercard though. With
really.
it's really unusual to see 3 title fights. I mean, granted, they're just like the USNBC, WPC titles, on the
Right.
ground on the line for them. But still, that's still a big deal, even with these caliber of fighters coming here, because that's a stepping stone to that next level of fights for these guys.
Right.
Nick Jones, especially, man, I can't speak highly enough, about this guy. He's coming in. He's 9-3. I've seen him through his worst. I've seen him through some of his best, and he's going to come in a house of fire. He's motivated for this
And
night and has been preparing for a while.
and I know
Same
from
thing.
my posts and the people I've been talking to in my circle that Cusimano, did I say that right? Cusimano. Yeah, he's no slouch either. This is actually
Hmm.
probably could be fight of the night if you want my opinion, because for
I
once we're
agree.
getting the heavyweight and they're gonna really duke it out. So it's gonna another fault here. is that if these boys go in there and do their business, Tyson and Jones is going to look foolish come that time. Because if you see 3 fights where they really go in and tear it up, and then you get Jake Paul in there dancing around, and then you get the other guy, and then Tyson and Jones are like, you know, you're going to be like, turn off, man, I'm out. Why would you even want to sit through that after watching these guys really go at it? I think them, like you said, them first three are going to be huge.
Unless we're really really being duped by Tyson and Jones, man, I don't see them like going out there and just pitter pattering with each other. I
I hope
know the rules say what they say, but at the same time, the rules don't say you can't hit them with full power. They don't say that. You
Now
know,
I'll give you 1 point to prove your point though.
yeah.
You are correct. Tyson did bite off somebody's ear, so anything can happen.
Yeah, Evander Holyfield. Ever since then, he's like, "What?"
Yeah, right. And then
Did you ever
and then
see that
Fernandez.
commercial where he
Yeah,
gets his ear back?
Fernandez
Oh,
says my prediction is Tyson wins in the 6th round with a strong body shot, but then he would get disqualified, theoretically speaking. So there's that. And then I think this will create more tension and have more replay value than Floyd versus Connor. I don't think Tyson will act. Tyson consistently has performed to win every time, 100%. And then I can't see Roy Jones Jr. winning the fight against Tyson. Mike has too much frustration brewing within, and he will hear the bell ring, and it will be kill mode for Mike Tyson. And I mean, that's obviously before the ayahuasca, because he's been deep
I have a
tripping.
question.
Just,
You mentioned
sure.
that like if Tyson dropped Jones in the 6th round, like Fernando said, that it would he would get disqualified for that. Where do the rules say that? It says no
It
knockouts,
says
which I
on
interpreted as no knockouts awarded, meaning that like that don't mean that knockouts can't happen. It's just you're not going to get a winner that way. There's not going to be a
right,
winner in an exhibition match anyway. So I kind of
right.
don't understand why they would disqualify. How can you disqualify? There's not going to be a winner anyway.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. So are they just going to be like who waves it off? And I think
The referee.
that in itself, right?
Exhibition
The
matches
referee,
happen all the time. Sometimes, like especially from a promoter standpoint, you get a couple of guys who they'll be training for a fight, and all of a sudden, like the week of the fight, or a couple days before the fight, their opponent drops out, whether due to injury or stupidity or fear. Sometimes they have that no nut problem. It happens. And then all of a sudden you're left with this fighter who's been going through a full fight camp with nothing to do, but still wants to do something because he's sold these tickets. He's got all these people coming to watch him. He's got, a couple thousand people or a couple hundred people in that arena wanting to watch him compete. And then all of a sudden you got this other guy that, hadn't been training much. He comes in, but he's one of those always ready guys. And, the commission won't allow them to have a legitimate boxing match because of either experience levels or so on and so forth, but they'll allow them to get in there for an exhibition, and it's still a little bit of action. Both of these guys will still go in there and perform and do their best and do what they can to show off for the crowd. The one thing about this is there may not be an official commission appointed winner, but by God, you can guarantee that both of these men are going to go in there fighting for the opinion of the world. So, like at the end of the day, after this fight, we're going to come on these shows. We're going to come on According to Woods. We're going to come on to the Talk Before the Walk. We're going to do all these stuff and talk about these fights. And the opinion of the people, the internet, the whole universe is going to sit there and say, "Oh, Mike Tyson did this, or Roy Jones did this. This is who we thought won." And the majority of the opinion of the people, if you get Mike Tyson coming in there and knocking out Roy Jones with an unofficial knockout, but they stop the fight and wave it off, man, everybody in the whole world is going to see Mike Tyson as that killer as he was back in the Iron Mike days.
yeah. I mean, I hope that is absolutely true. And then Matthew Hagan says that he agrees, and I don't think anyone other than Tyson can be fight of the night. But that's his opinion as a Tyson fan. Total disclosure. And at Breeze didn't know the rules. Thank you for mentioning. Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the rules, right? I mean,
can you bring them up?
no knockdown.
Yeah.
No knockdowns, 2-minute rounds. I don't know, man.
It's
I
no
just feel.
knockout. Uh, let me look them up real quick because I got these right here. Let's see here. It'll be a real quick Google search. Ain't nothing but a thing, Jelly Bean.
Yeah.
There we go.
Since we got a second though, um, I think that everything that this card is getting promoted for, I think the bare knuckle fighting championship should be getting double that promotion and excitement because it's going to be way better. I'm just telling you. That's my opinion.
All right, here's what I got. The bout will take place over 8 rounds, 2 minutes each. So still 8 rounds. I mean, granted, it's not your 3 minute round. Yeah, I get it. They're older. They're doing their stuff. They're going to be required to wear headgear, which, the only thing I hate about that is the lack of peripheral vision for headgear. So I think that's going to make them more susceptible to knockouts. But, even
Right.
wearing headgear against Tyson, even, Roy Jones
yeah,
Jr. coming in with heavyweight power right now, too. These guys are going to be, it's going to hurt. They're wearing 12-ounce gloves versus 10 ounces. And,
Right.
anybody that's been in, sparring with 12 ounces and 10 ounces, you're not really going to tell that much of a difference. For some reason in the boxing world, when you're, drawing out your contracts, they're really specific on the ounces of your gloves, whether it's 8 ounce, 10 ounce, 12 ounce, like with your tough man contest, it was all the way up to 16 ounces. They're not pillow fighting with these. Still 12-ounce gloves. They hurt. It says this, if either boxer suffers a bad cut, the exhibition is over. So they're not going to let him fight over and over, like bleeding like a stuck pig. There's no knockouts, which I interpret that as no knockouts awarded. So I think they're doing that as like a method to entice them not to go the full round. But I mean,
Right.
what just based off of Mike Tyson's interview when he sit there and like damn near cried talking about how he missed fighting so much because he felt like a bitch because he can't. Coming into this, I mean, this is his moment. I don't know how Roy Jones feels about that. I didn't get a chance to watch the Joe Rogan podcast on that, but just based off of that Tyson interview alone, man, that hit me to the core. Former pro fighter myself, I understand that to my soul, it hurts. And so with him coming in this may be his moment. Let me see here. Trying to find some more of these rules. That was pretty much about it on the rules that I've seen.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's about what I thought it was. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really see this. I mean, it's still 8 rounds. I mean, at over 50 years old, man, that's hard. Two high caliber former fighters.
I mean, and a lot of for the people out there that don't fight, okay, they're like, oh, 2 minute round. Let me tell you something. 2 minutes is a lifetime. A lifetime. So, and these boys are going to do 8 of them. So think about that. I mean, I know the people at home are like, oh man, 2 minutes ain't nothing. It's a long time. So I
think about this. Yeah, think about this as a comparison. If an MMA fight, excuse me, if an MMA fight at the professional level goes a full distance, that's only 15 minutes. This is still 16 minutes of fighting.
Exactly.
If it goes the distance.
And unlike MMA, there's not much stalling in this. Okay, you can in MMA ground you can stall in the clinch, you can stall in a dozen different places. Not so much in boxing. It's all go, 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 and they separate you and go, 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 go. Maybe a hug. So,
now this may how this fight's going to go. You could break this down, kind of determining, like one of those Floyd Mayweather fights where Floyd Mayweather he's a phenomenal boxer, and this is where I was talking about the boxing world talks about boxers versus boxer punchers. You get these boxer punchers that will legitimately chase you down and try to outpunch you. Whereas Floyd Mayweather, being the boxer, for those that aren't familiar with these terms, he evades, he moves, he uses his footwork, he tries to catch you in traps, things like this. So he'll try to bait you in and then catch you with that counter punch. And he's the one that is trying to be like the ring general per se. So those boxers are more of the art form of boxing versus like the boxer punchers. One thing about Mike Tyson, he is a legitimate fighter in a boxing world. You know, you get this guy in a street fight, you can guarantee he's going to do everything he can to, come out victorious and keep his life, in a life or death situation. You know that from Tyson. Like, you wouldn't have any doubt about that. And in the boxing ring, he comes at you like a pit bull off the leash. He has some very fine-tuned boxing technique to do it with. But like in his mind, he's coming to kill you. He's coming to take your head completely off your shoulders. And at the end of the day, he wants to eat your children. Kind of a callback.
I hope so. I hope so. I mean, but that's the Tyson that you want to see. Like, that's it. You want that Rottweiler. You want that mini pit. That's essentially it. And again, I guess it does work, right? Because Tyson was always a smaller heavyweight. And Roy Jones, competed in other lighter weights, to come up and claim that title. So, yeah. So, I mean, there's that. And then Matthew Hagan says, hopefully they don't care about the official rules and fight to win, even with a knockout. I hope so too. And then John Parker, yeah, absolutely. Lots of people are better fighters right now, but nobody has the legendary status. Fight of the night is subjective. Yeah, that's just like the greatest of all time, right? That's subjective, and you've got time bias, right? So 15 years from now, like, there might be two robots that you can't, unbeatable robots and whatever, and John Jones will be just a thought, an idea of our imagination, right? So, like, I'm sure there's like an 8-year-old training now who will probably, male or female, might be considered greatest of all time, if we look 20 years down the road. So again, time bias is definitely a thing. I love that term, and Luke Thomas said it on the road in podcast, so I'm borrowing it. Creative liberties applied, and he says exactly. Hopefully rules go out the window, and I mean, at the very least,
man, I can't stand Luke Thomas. I'm gonna say that right
now. Okay, that's fair. It's fair.
Yeah. Like, bring it on, Luke. You're kind of a dick.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely has.
The thing about Luke is he kind of pissed me off. He was talking about the Bellator fights being here in Oklahoma at the WinStar Casino down in Thackerville. And they're talking about Thackerville, Oklahoma. I mean, granted, there's not a lot other than that casino there, but it's on the border of Texas and Oklahoma, so you get traffic from both states on this. And he's looking at it like it's just a flyover place just because it's in Oklahoma technically. And I'm just like, man, like, there's a lot of high caliber fighters that come in there and fight for Bellator at this world's largest casino. And you're over here thinking that it's just some chump thing. Man, that's kind of crap. I mean, we're on Native American land. Yeah. The Chickasaws, shout out to them for being able to host these Bellator events, bringing some big name fights to Oklahoma. Second only being like Rage in the Cage, Oklahoma City, who's having an event on December 5th, kind of a little plug for those guys. You can check those out on Fight TV. But I mean, we get, Bellator coming in. We got a lot of, up and coming fighters. A lot of these guys coming in for, all over Oklahoma that are, going to come in and make a name for themselves and hopefully, do a lot of good things. And he was talking trash about the whole state of Oklahoma as if like we didn't have, Randy Couture coming out of OSU. We didn't have Daniel Cormier coming out of Oklahoma State University. We didn't have Mark Munoz coming out of these things. Like, Luke Thomas just pissed me off, man. I'm sorry.
No,
so
go on that
guy.
Go on that tangent. No, because I mean, what? So Jake Hager wasn't anything.
Jake Hager,
I mean, the Briscoes, both Jack and Jerry. We're talking about what Oklahoma
is. About wrestlers, man. Wrestlers. This is a premier place for wrestlers. There's a reason why we have
Jack and Jerry Briscoe were legit wrestlers from. I can't remember what tribe they're from, but like I think Jack was like didn't have a pin scored on him his entire career, right? Like, and then they only went to pro wrestling because there's money in that rather than going to the Olympics, right? Obviously, Dr. Death Steve Williams, right? I mean, he tore through, before his wrestling,
he played
whatever.
Football and wrestled for OU.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
He's a phenomenal athlete. Jake Hager, same thing. He played football for OU and wrestled for OU. You got a lot of these guys. We have the Hall of Fame, the Wrestling Hall of Fame here in Oklahoma, up in near Stillwater. And man, it's pretty awesome. I mean, you get a lot of these real hardcore heritage, like legit wrestling, not just pro wrestling. There's some pro wrestling here, but it's legitimate wrestling.
Danny,
Mat wrestling, collegiate wrestling, high caliber athletes coming out of here that have
Danny
produced some
Hodge.
multi-division UFC champions. Danny Hodge, he was the former commissioner of the Oklahoma State Athletic Commission. God bless that man. That dude, he had a grip that he could break pliers with just his
Pliers with his bare hands.
Yeah, he was ridiculous. So I mean, Oklahoma has a huge tradition in sports.
Don Fry,
and
Steve Monaco.
Mm-hmm. All these guys came through here, and I mean, yeah, like one thing about Oklahoma is, you get that stigma of like it may just be a flyover state. And there's a hotbed of combat sports activity happening here. The whole rest of the world, it seems to be shutting down for COVID on these events. Oklahoma, we're still putting them on. Like we said, we got Rage in the Cage 77 going to be happening on December 5th. And January 30th, we're getting Tom Schoaf, bare knuckle boxer himself, who just had some highlight fights on there, taking on Cody Pfister, a former UFC fighter as well, in the main event of Rage in the Cage 78. So I mean, we're putting on some big fights here, as far as this level. And I mean, we got some awesome stuff. We got people like Bubba McDaniels, former Ultimate Fighter contestant as well. He was on Team Jones. He's coming through this stuff. We got a lot of people. We have the XFN shows up in Tulsa where you got up and coming fighters like Rome Lindsay, who's going to be, I think, one of the next big things. We just had a title fight with Lamont KO King Stafford, who holds state records in fastest knockout times. These guys are going to be your next stars in Bellator, UFC, on these contender series, stuff like that. So if they're not watching out for these names coming in from Oklahoma, man, they're going to be overlooked, and they're going to be like very surprised when they get knocked out.
The Raging Panda now resides.
Raging Panda, Julia,
she
man,
now resides
knocking people out. We got Stephanie Geltmacher as well. She just fought in Invicta, just had a beautiful knockout victory there. I mean, these Oklahoma fighters, shout out to Solid MMA and Cobra BJJ with Stephanie and Tamara and all them. These fighters are coming up, and they're going to be the next thing. They're going to be this next level. And right now, during this pandemic, nobody else is getting any action. So these guys are really going to be showcased and highlighted. And that's where the money's at, man.
Absolutely. So, guys, I mean, thank you guys for jumping in short notice. But literally plug away. Justin, you kind of led the pack for it.
I'm a promoting maniac, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have it. Everything you got, as well as your social medias.
Check me out on the Talk Before the Walk Facebook page. We host that where we interview fighters before they go in to fight on fights and whatnot. This weekend, we're hosting a live grappling event for Global Fighting Entertainment. I own Fast Productions Media. You can check us out at fast-productions.com. We're putting on the production for them, and we're allowing them to stream their event on the Talk Before the Walk. It's a paid-for event online, Facebook, but it's only $14.99. So come in, check it out, support your local fighters with that. They're going to be doing a lot of really cool stuff at a church up here. So it's going to be pretty awesome. I mean, it's not going to be a real big event, but it's going to be fun. Something neat to kind of get that post Thanksgiving martial arts bite that you need. And then, like we said, December 5th, we got Rage in the Cage OKC happening at the Oklahoma City Public Farmers Market. It's going to be an outstanding night of fights. They got some title fights going on there as well, so check that out on Fight TV. For that, only $14.99 as well. We've got Buzzsaw Fighting Championships happening in Guthrie on December 19th. Check that out. We're going to be on Fight TV. It's going to be amateur kickboxing regulated by the WKO. So we got some high caliber talent coming in for that. Jason Klein coming in from Texas. We've got Ingrid Siwa, who is like 7 foot tall, coming in, doing some kickboxing. We got Jose Montalongo, who's like a 9-time, 8-time champion in kickboxing as well. But we got a lot of these high caliber kickboxing fighters who are going to be breaking onto the scene in the pros coming up very soon. So that's going to be pretty interesting as well. So, come check us out, guys. We absolutely love having all the fans support your local fighters any chance you get. We got, fighters coming up constantly. I help run the firm sports management group, so we are constantly promoting like these next up and coming stars like Montaigne the Monster McFarland, former Rage in the Cage middleweight amateur champion. We got Tyvon Morrison, who'll be competing this weekend at the grappling event. We got Rome Lindsay, who came up just a little bit short in that XFN kickboxing tournament due to an injury. He wasn't able to compete in the finals, but man, had he not been injured, I think he would have took that title for sure. So his next outing, he's got a fire under his belly right now. Who he's going to be knocking some people out for sure. We got Lamont KO King Stafford coming in. Like I said, he holds state records for fastest knockouts. He's a 205-pound light heavyweight champion for Rage in the Cage. He's going to be fighting up in Wisconsin for a title fight as soon as his hand heals up from his last fight. We got all kinds of awesome fighters for the firm sports management group that is just going to be coming off the charts, man. So, thank you for having us, man. We certainly appreciate it. Love you guys. According to Woods is the shit. So pretty happy to be on the show, man.
And then, John, what you got? You got a fight coming up, good sir.
I got all kinds of good stuff. You never know what to do. I'd like to throw a shout out to one of my oldest sponsors, Prime Athletics, best gear company on earth. I'm supposed to be fighting in March for Ammo Fight League if everything goes COVID friendly, and then I got a grappling match in April at top level grappling. So we got that going on. Check us out on Team Nightmare MMA on Facebook. I also run New England MMA News, so we try to keep up on New England MMA News. So if you want to check out that, feel free. But the only other thing I would like to throw a shout out to is my buddy Chris Sorrow, who is about ready to go to war, I believe, December 11th. And I think it's Biloxi, at least it usually is. Taking on.
That's where I graduated high school. Biloxi.
It's
Love
number 5 ranked heavyweight in the world against number 3 ranked heavyweight in the world.
That's gonna be a good fight.
That's gonna be a really good fight. Chris Sorrow's coming off 3-0 himself, so he's started to make it 4-0 in my eyes. Knock on wood. And I tune in for that. I mean, I think that's going to be the future of boxing. So I hope to God it does go that way. So once again, according to Woods is the shit, rock and roll, and I appreciate having me on. And anytime, brother, let me know.
John, good luck on your fights, brother, and tell your buddy good luck too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he wants on the podcast, let me know. You get in those DMs. And one bonus question for Matthew Hagan, and thank you, Matthew, for checking in with us and commenting. I can't thank you enough. But do you guys ever think that anyone would dethrone Jorge Masvidal?
Go ahead.
Yes. Don't know who, but it's inevitable.
Agreed. And
That's
honestly,
just the way fight works.
Just gonna take a really good jiu-jitsu guy that can take a punch, and I think he's done it. You know what I mean? It's all it's gonna take. I just don't know who that guy is.
When it comes to jiu-jitsu, one thing that like a lot of people don't see, like this is where I'm talking about the analytical breakdown of these fights. A lot of people don't realize that a solid wrestling background does counteract a good jiu-jitsu background. Now, the same yin-yang token of that, the jiu-jitsu can counteract the wrestling too. So these two guys are going to be in an epic war of attrition, depending on who has the better grappling. Now, what John was saying, who could take the better punch, and also who can deliver the better punch as well. So whoever can dominate and still potentially deliver the most amount of damage, or potentially ride out the scorecard on that for a decision. That's who's going to come out victorious on that. Jorge Masvidal, he's the king of the mountain right now when it comes to that. So I mean, just kind of like Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's going to be on top of the mountain for as long as he can out wrestle people and keep that dominant, submission and dominant ground and pound mentality that he's been known for 29 fights and whoever could come along and neutralize where his strong point is and emphasize what they could do damage on is going to be the next person if he doesn't retire before then.
I honestly thought somebody like Ben Askren could have taken him out if he wouldn't have walked right into that knee. I mean, if that would have, say he missed that knee somehow and got a hold of him, I think, it really would have been the kryptonite to him because, I mean, Masvidal is a street beast. I mean, this guy fought on the street. He's straight up tough. He's bad ass. But we all do know he only got into the wrestling jiu-jitsu half of his life after, let's say, 20 years old, maybe 19, because he wasn't doing a lot of it in his street fight. So I'm not saying he didn't have the knowledge, but either way, he wasn't practicing it. So I'm thinking that his kryptonite got to be that. You need like you said, to be somebody that's going to take you to the ground, Matt Hughes you into submission, and you can't punch back if you're a pretzel. So,
exactly. And to kind of expound upon your point with that knee, one thing about flash knockouts like that, I always want to see something ran back.
Right, I thought so too. Yeah.
If Jorge Masvidal, went in there and just dominated a full round or something, and then got a knockout, then yeah, he outclassed his opponent. But he caught him in what would potentially be considered a freak knockout. One of those you just don't expect. It was a flash knockout out of freaking nowhere, kind of like an RKO on WWE. You just didn't expect it to happen, but there it went. And I kind of wish that, and I don't know how well Jorge Masvidal's camp would take it, because he's probably looking at it like, oh, I already beat him. But at the same time, I think that Ben Askren needs that redemption, and I think the fans really need to know who the real better man is, skill for skill. And you didn't get that with their fight. No, you just got Jorge Masvidal caught him, out of nowhere. And I still to this day don't know who the better actual fighter is. I just know who got caught.
I figure if they would have run it back, though, I think logically it would end similar. It would be a knockout of that same caliber, but it would be closer to the third round, and we would have had to dealt with 2 rounds of Askren humping his leg. So I guess, did we really miss out on anything? I don't know.
I'm still curious. I'm
intrigued by the idea. I think that's how it would go, but I could be wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
Oh, another great fight that's coming up. Have you guys seen? Is it Slippery Pete Barrett versus Ben Askren's son there, Hooper?
No. I got to look into that.
Legit,
yeah.
Slippery Pete's out of Citadel down with Delagrati and them guys.
Oh, wow.
Nasty. And he might be able to dethrone the super kid he's having a Sugar Shane did there for a few minutes, where he was the top of the wall. So I think Slippery Pete could take him out. That's going to be an upset, so gambling for money on Slippery.
Legit.
Yeah. Now, Jamal Harris says Conor would dethrone Jorge, I should say. But Jorge is skilled enough to predetermine that knockout 100%. And then Jorge is the better fighter, like Brad Pitt when he played Achilles. So, yes. Now, I actually, a lot of people sleep on him. I say Gilbert Burns. I'd say he poses a real problem to not only Masvidal, but obviously the title fight coming up with Usman. He presents a real problem. So I'm not saying he'll dethrone him, but I'm just saying it'll be an interesting fight. So that's if anybody wants to
take nothing away from Jorge Masvidal. I mean, he is
exactly.
a phenomenal fighter, hands
Absolutely.
down, baddest motherfucker on the planet. He's got a belt to prove it.
Yeah.
He's wins and losses. They are what they are, but at the end of the day, that dude is a bad MF. And
Yeah, he is a bad motherfucker. Huh?
yeah, he really is. So I mean, take nothing away from Jorge Masvidal. He obviously earned his victory against Ben Askren. I just personally want to see it ran back. I kind of want to see a rematch in that, just because it did end so quickly. And I mean, to be honest, they had a pretty cool build up. I mean, they both talked a lot of trash to each other.
Yeah.
Ben Askren is a promoting son of a bitch for sure. Jorge Masvidal, he's amazing. I love what he did with fighting Nate Diaz. Where he came in looking like Scarface, coming in, fuck the
Yeah.
Diaz brothers. I love that. He's got that promotional acclimate and that way to really sell the fight for you and make you want to watch it. And, anytime I get to see a couple of guys that could do that, whether it's a rematch or not, I still want to see it. I do want to see Ben Askren come back and see if he can, if he could come in with a different strategy, not get caught right away, and see if he could potentially wear Masvidal down. And if he can't, Masvidal's obviously the better fighter, regardless. I mean, he's got that win before, and if he can catch another win, it's unquestionable, undisputed that he'd be a better fighter than Ben Askren. But right now, there's still a question mark.
Yeah, that question will be solved. But again, dude, thank you guys both for joining us. And then Matthew Hagan says, love all three of you guys. Love you too, brother. Thank you again.
Shout
Thank
out
you
to
so
Matthew
much.
Hagan, brother.
Yeah, shout out to Matthew, and I love Nick Diaz, but you're right, Cool Breeze, 100%. So we will end on that note. But thank you guys for joining us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to not only their pages but also According to Woods. But don't just take my word for it. Here's Zeta Zang.